Welcome to Team SNG. Today we are going to be doing an update to the Ancient Warrior profile that was featured on the channel earlier this year. This deck has been desperately requiring an update since February, as it's continued to get additional support through the last few core sets. So this is an update to that. While I've got your attention, I'd like to ask you, do leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe. Also, check out Team's Facebook page. Link to that will be down below in the description. And while you're at it, check out the Team's Patreon if you're interested in having your profiles featured here on this channel. The reason I personally like the Ancient Warrior archetype is its ability to break a board. It does it better than most decks out there, and its ability to go second is really something different in this current day and age of Yu-Gi-Oh!, where everyone wants to go first and build a break my board kind of board. That being said, let's just get into it. The first monster we run is Ancient Warrior's Summao. This is the Rota for the deck. He lets you send a card from your hand or from the field to the grave to search out an Ancient Warrior's monster and add it to your hand. On top of that, if an Ancient Warrior monster activates its effect while he's on the field, he gets to target and remove a card by bouncing it back to the hand on your opponent's side of the field. So this can be utilized to basically not get rid of something that is destruction proof. The only problem is that you do need to be able to target that card. Next we run 2 copies of Ancient Warrior's Graceful Shugong. What he does is he lets you search your spell traps. So you send a card from your field or you discard a card from your hand to search out your spell trap. The other thing that he can do is he lets you target a card on your opponent's side of the field, an effect monster specifically, and negate that monster's effect until the end of the turn. So it does allow you to turn off troublesome effects that you're concerned about having to deal with if you can activate another Ancient Warrior's effect while he's on the field. Next we run 2 copies of Ancient Warrior's Virtuous Liu Xuan. Liu Xuan has a couple different effects. If you don't have the board state you want, and maybe your opponent has cards on the field, more monsters on the field than you could send a card from your hand or field to the grave to special summon an Ancient Warrior from the deck. Also, when an attack is declared involving an Ancient Warrior, and that can be offensive or defensive, you can draw a card from your deck. So in the old days, this used to be the only way you could trigger your Summao and your Graceful Shugong on your opponent's turn. However, that has changed as time has gone on. One of the ways that has changed is with the addition of Ancient Warrior's Ingenious Sujay Kong. What Sujay Kong does is, as a quick effect, he can negate a spell trap on your opponent's side of the field by sending an Ancient Warrior Saga spell or trap from your side of the field to the grave. If Virtuous Liu Xuan is on the board though, then he can negate a monster effect as well. The activation of Ingenious Sujay Kong's effect will also trigger Masterful Summao and Graceful Shugong's effects on your opponent's turn, so it does allow you to control your opponent's board state more consistently. Next, we run one of the best cards for going second with the deck, and that is Loyal Guanyan. Loyal Guanyan has a Cyber Dragon-ish effect, where if your opponent controls monsters and you don't, special summon it. He also kind of has a Pankratops-ish effect, where you get to target a monster on your opponent's side of the field, so long as your opponent controls more monsters as you, and then destroy that monster. So it does help you shrink your opponent's board state. The only problem with it is sometimes counterintuitive when you compare it to your Virtuous Liu Xuan, where you want your opponent to have more monsters than you for his effects to go off. Next is one of the better extenders the deck currently has access to in Valiant Zhang Dai. We run 2 copies of this. If you control 2 Ancient Warrior monsters, special summon this from the hand. If your opponent controls more monsters than you can activate this guy's effect to attack not once but twice. Also, during your turn, this guy gains 300 attack for every monster your opponent controls. So he can get very, very big, and he can destroy multiple monsters through battle, which can be really useful because of the fact that obviously that helps you break through your opponent's board. Next, we have an Ancient Warrior that is good for going first or going second, and that is Ancient Warrior's fearsome Zhang Yuan. Zhang Yuan will special summon himself from your hand if an attack is declared involving one of your Ancient Warriors. It will then let you target your opponent's monster, and that monster will lose 1,000 attack. So this basically allows you to make it easier for you to run over your opponent's board, but if you're going second, it also lets you put an additional body on board to attack your opponent. So that can be really, really useful. On top of that, it continues to help you break your opponent's board, because if your opponent's monster is destroyed by battle while this is on the field, you get to target a card on your opponent's field and destroy it. So it continues to break your opponent's board through both of its effects. The last Ancient Warrior monster that we run is Ancient Warrior's Ambitious Chowday. Now, I only run one copy of this because it's a bit of a win-more card. It can be really easily searched out in the deck as well, so it's not like you're not going to be able to see it. This card will special summon itself from the hand if a card on your opponent's side of the field is destroyed. Also, if you control another Ancient Warrior, this card cannot be targeted by battle or card effects, meaning that it is protected from targeting so long as you have something else on the field. On top of that, this card has a bit of a Goyo Guardian effect, where if you destroy a monster on your opponent's side of the field by battle with this card, you get to special summon that monster to your side of the field. So that can be really useful in the sense that it takes the resources away from your opponent and potentially helps you gain resources which you can utilize to go into your own extra deck. Finally, the last monster we run, due to the fact this is a going second deck, is 3 copies of Ganassil, the Sea Turtle Kaiju. And that does it for our monster lineup. On to our spells. So we have quite a significant spell lineup as the deck uses its monster effects to break the opponent's board and the spells to give ourselves the consistency and the ability to play through problematic situations that our opponent might put up against us going first. So the first spell that we run is 3 copies of the best spell in the deck, Ancient Warrior Saga 3 Visits. What 3 Visits does is if we normal or special summon an Ancient Warrior while this is active on the field, we get to search an Ancient Warrior monster from the deck. Also, if this card is sent from the field to the grave, we get to special summon an Ancient Warrior monster from our hand. So when you think about it and you pair that up with something like your Sun Ma'o, or even your Shu Gong, when you normal summon either of these, you get the search for an Ancient Warrior monster from your 3 visits. Then you get a search from them, sending 3 visits to the grave. That will then let you special out whatever it was you searched with 3 visits, on top of searching out using either of them. In that way, this deck feeds off of itself using this card. Next, we run 2 copies of Ancient Warrior Saga Borrowing of Arrows. Borrowing of Arrows is an interesting card in this deck because it lets us again search out our spell traps by putting them straight on the board so long as this card leaves the field while we control 2 or more Ancient Warrior monsters. But that's not the reason that we run this card. The reason we run this card is it makes it easier for us to run over our opponent's monsters, because when this is activated, you can target a monster on your opponent's side of the field and a monster on your side of the field, and you get to have your opponent's monster, and your monster gains the lost attack that your opponent loses. So it makes your monster really big and their monster really small, so you should easily run over anything your opponent puts in your way with this card's effect. Next, we want to make sure that our combos go through uninterrupted. And so, for that, we have Ancient Warrior Saga East by South Winds. What East by South Winds does is it lets us flip a coin, and if it lands on tails, this card destroys itself. But if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, your opponent cannot react to Ancient Warrior monster effects for the rest of the turn. Also, all Ancient Warrior monsters you currently control when this card leaves the field gain the effect, when this card declares an attack, you can destroy one card your opponent currently controls. So that lets us avoid targeting protections and start breaking our opponent's board through battle yet again, and it also combos off really well with Chao Dai, and potentially also really well with Zhang Yuan. Finally, the last Ancient Warrior Saga we run is Ancient Warrior Saga Sun Liu Alliance. If you control two Ancient Warriors with different attributes, you get to select an attribute and negate all monster effects on your opponent's side of the field that have that attribute. So it acts as a bit of a skill drain for you. Also, if an Ancient Warrior monster activates its effect, or if your opponent special summons a monster, you get to give all of your Ancient Warriors a power boost equal to the amount of Ancient Warriors you can currently control times 300. Next, just some consistency boosting cards. First of which is Fire Formation Tenki. Search out a level 4 or lower Beast Warrior monster from the deck. All your Ancient Warrior monsters are going to be Beast Warriors, so that's really useful. And because the deck can become normal summon reliant, we also run Fire Formation Tenzu. Next, as I say, some generic going second cards that really help the deck out. 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. Turning off all of our opponent's monster effects can be absolutely critical. And 1 copy of Raigeki, because we're only allowed to run 1. Which, I mean, I get it, but like, I want 3. So, this can be really useful for us because of the very simple fact that, you know, obviously turning off our opponent's stuff, good. Destroying all our opponent's stuff, good. The one thing I will say about Raigeki, though, is it does turn off Luo Guanyan, it can turn off Liu Xuan, so you do want to be a little bit careful about when you decide to use it, but it's still a really good card for us to utilize and to put our opponent on their back foot and easily break through our opponent's board, potentially for that OTK. The final 2 spells that we run, just to give the deck a little more consistency, some draw power. Pot of Desires. We run 2 copies of it. We don't really need to see it. The deck does help so much searching, and it's got its own little engine internally, which really is quite consistent, but it is nice for us to have a little bit of draw power just in case we want to get that extra card in our hand. That does it for our spells. Onto our trap. We only run 1. And that is Ancient Warriors Saga, Defense of Chongban. This card is really, really useful. And whenever I go to a competitive event, I do run 2 copies of this in the side deck, just in case I end up having to go first. What it does is that we can make it so our opponent cannot attack an Ancient Warrior monster by sending this from the field to the grave at the start of our opponent's battle phase. Also, while it's in the grave, if our opponent declares an attack, we can banish this card from the grave to special summon from our deck an Ancient Warrior monster. So it can be really useful to send this to grave really early on, whether it's from our hand or from the field, as it does let us extend and potentially play for turn 4 if we can't necessarily break our opponent's entire board going second. So that's why I really do run this. Now onto the extra deck. The extra deck consists of a rank 4 engine. It also consists of several link monsters, but most importantly, the newest thing that the extra deck runs is 3 copies of Ancient Warrior Oath Double Dragon Lords. You'll notice that there's a nice Liu Xuan sitting there, and we also got our little ingenious Sujay Kong sitting here. So, I like how it ties everything together. The materials for this is 2 Beast Warrior monsters, including a Wind Ancient Warrior monster. So it can be really important for us to be able to see a Wind Ancient Warrior that we can put on the field, whether it's Loyal Guanyang, Valiant Zhang Dai, Ingenious Sujay Kong, or Virtuous Liu Xuan. This card has 3 effects. When this card is on the field, all Ancient Warrior monsters gain 500 attack and defense. So he already starts at 1600 rather than 11, which is nice. When he is link summoned, you get to search your deck for an Ancient Warrior card. And on top of that, as a quick effect, you can send a card from your hand or field to the grave to bounce a card from your opponent's side of the field. So, that can be extremely useful for us because we can trigger his effect on our opponent's turn, which will then potentially trigger Sun-Mo's effect, allowing you to bounce not one, but 2 cards really, really quickly and really easily. So it does allow us to sort of control our opponent's board state as they're trying to build a board if we ever have to go first, or as I've said previously, if we have to play for turn 4, then it stops our opponent from necessarily building too big a board on turn 3 and potentially running us over. So he can be extremely useful in that sense. On top of him, the next link monster that we run is IP Masquerena. So this isn't a typical card that we see running around in this deck, but I like it for those times we do have to go first. It can sometimes be useful for us to have the IP Masquerena, the Double Dragon Lords, and the Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax, as IP Masquerena and Double Dragon Lords will make us our Avermax, and Ancient Warrior's Double Dragon Lords with his search effect and the ability to bounce something on our opponent's turn can sometimes keep our opponent from building too big a board that we can then play for turn 3 if we do have to go first. So that's why I run the IP. Typically, I'm not going into it. If I'm going second, I'm just going to try and run over our opponent. If I can't, I might still go for the IP in the hopes of playing for turn 4, as I've stated a couple times. On to the rank 4s that we run. First is 2 copies of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King. You can run whatever rank 4s you like. I like this guy, 2 level 4 Beast Warriors, searches out a fire formation, and also potentially lets you recur monsters from your grave by sending 3 fire formations from the field to the grave. On top of that, he acts as a blanket negate, so he's a Dark Ruler no more as well. By detaching a Xyz material from him, he negates all monster effects currently on the field till the end of the next turn, except for Beast Warriors. And seeing as everything we're running pretty much is Beast Warrior, that shouldn't bother us. Next I run number 37, Hope Woven Dragon Spider Shark. This requires 2 level 4 water monsters. He can lower the attack of everything your opponent controls by 1,000. And he lets you special summon a monster from your graveyard when he's sent to grave. So, again, just another useful card. Next, non-targeting, non-destructive removal in our Light Dragon Attic Nister. Then we got our board wipe in our Evil Swarm Exciton Knight. We've got our control of our opponent's graveyard in our Abyss Dweller. So this is the rank 4 engine that we run. Typically, we're not going too far into it, or maybe not even into it at all, as the Ancient Warriors are pretty good on the field on their own anyway, and when you partner with the Double Dragon Lords, you really don't necessarily need this rank 4 engine, but it's nice to have. It's more of a, if you need it, it's here than anything else. Seeing as this is a going second deck, you could run the Utopia double play, but I really don't like the Utopia double play. It's too easy to stop. When I went to regionals, I actually ended up winning a game just because I was able to stop the Utopia double play, and my opponent couldn't do anything, and he ended up sitting there with a monster that was easy to run over next turn. So I do run a Utopia package, but I just go for Utopia the Lightning instead, as I think that this is the better Utopia package than going for the Utopia double play, which is a one and done play. That does it for our extra deck. So, my thoughts about this deck. The deck can be really good. Its ability to search out so much with its monsters and with some of its spells is really useful and really good for the consistency. On top of that, its ability to extend with some of its other monsters is really useful, and it's something the deck desperately needed. But what the deck did suffer from originally was its inability to play on your opponent's turn. This has been rectified with cards like the Ingenious Sujei Kong, and cards like Zhang Yuan, and even your Ancient Warriors Link monster in Double Dragon Lords. On top of that, as I've stated, the spells can be really useful for adding consistency and breaking through your opponent's board, along with your ability that you have with your one trap card to stop your opponent from doing anything that they'd like to do, especially in the battle phase. Finally, because this is a going second deck, we do run some generic going second cards, like our Raigeki and our Dark Ruler No More, to make breaking our opponent's board just a simpler task. The reason I love this deck is it really can steal a win, and it can definitely put your opponent on their back foot if they don't know what to stop or how to stop it. This is definitely a decent rogue contender, and it now, with all of the tools and utilities that it has, really can break an opponent's board with ease and with a lot of consistency. To see that consistency, I recommend watching the test hands for this deck. Link to them will be down below as soon as they go live. That being said, I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video. Do check out the team's Facebook page, link down below. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe. And if you're interested in having your deck featured on the channel, I'm going to ask you, check out the Patreon below as well. We have a tier which will put you right here where I am today. That being said, I'll see you guys at the next video.